times have you had a conversation about whether what you studied in school was actually useful in your adult life? Did we need to learn about the Pythagoras theorem? Was algebra absolutely necessary? What about the periodic table? Did those lessons stay with you? Were they practical, or were some concepts an unnecessary burden? Well, the NCERT, that's the National Council of Educational Research and Training, has decided for Class 10 students. A new list has emerged of chapters axed from science and social study textbooks for Class 10. And as has been happening in the last few months, a fresh row has also erupted. So here's the list of the latest texts to be axed. From the Class 10 science textbook, out goes the periodic table. For those of you who've forgotten your Class 10 syllabus, that's a list of all the elements and how they relate to one another. Also gone is a chapter on sustainable management of natural resource and another one on sources of energy. From the social studies textbook, a chapter on popular struggles and movements, including the Narmada Bachao Andolan, have been removed. Other chapters titled Challenges to Democracy, Democracy and Diversity are also gone. One page on political parties of India has also been removed. Now, the NCERT has explained its cuts, and this they've been saying for some time. They say it's to ease the burden on students after 2 years of pandemic and hampered access to physical school. Some of the topics are overlapping, and they want to reduce the load on students. The move has come in for criticism, with some asking whether a topic as fundamental as the periodic table should be skipped from a science textbook in Class 10. Others argue that students who choose to pursue science in Class 11 will learn it. But the big picture goes beyond one chapter or one concept. The NCERT has consistently been in the news since April this year, when their rationalization of textbooks across grades came to light. Just this week, there was a run-in with the SGPC that wanted a line on the Khalistan movement dropped. In April, 1,800 scientists and educators have protested the removal of Darwin's evolution theory from Class 10 textbooks by writing an open letter. A political row broke out again in April when some details of Gandhiji's assassination were dropped. Parts of Mughal rule were removed too, all from Class 12 textbooks. A chapter on poverty and infra has been dropped from Class 11 books, and chapters on emergency were trimmed from Class 12 books. Some of these changes have angered political parties, others have academicians miffed, but the question is not so much as to who is upset. At the end of the day, it's about the students. So, are these rationalizations truly rational? Is there clarity on why some things have been cut and others have not? And is the COVID reason that, students need some kind of lessening of burden after COVID, is it still relevant even today? To speak on these issues, I'm joined now by Meeta Sengupta, Education Strategy and Policy Advisor. Professor Tanveer Ejaz, columnist and academician, is with me on the show. I'm speaking with Rupali Kudisha, Principal of American Public School, and Professor J.S. Rajput, former Director of the NCERT, also with me on the show today. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Meeta Sengupta, let me begin with your view on this. And let's just start with the latest cuts. Periodic table seems like a pretty basic concept in a Class 10 science textbook, considering Darwin's theory of evolution has also been cut. Or do you think that it's done and dusted? People who are interested can just go and learn about it somewhere else?
Well, of course, they can learn about it somewhere else. And in fact, that's the third point that I'd like to make, that one must not only depend upon textbooks or school textbooks. Education is an investment. When you're investing your money, then you don't invest it in just one place. Then why would you invest all your time and all your learning only in one set of textbooks? You must go abroad. But that is actually secondary to the issue that we are discussing right now. And I'd like to firstly place everything in context, because the new education policy that was approved in 2019, its implementation plan was created around 2020, certain teacher training, et cetera, started already in 2020, 2021. And based on that, the new curricular framework has been put out right now for discussion and consultation by the public. So the way I see this is that the NCERT did some cuts for the COVID for reasons of COVID, because it was a very high stress year, and we do know how difficult it was for our board level students and their severe mental health issues caused due to the impact of the COVID pandemic and all the other things. They did need a reduction. Now we happen to be in a sort of gap year right now, because the NCF is out for consultation. It's going to take a year. And therefore, the next year, and this is what the NCERT also has put up on its website, it says, it has a little section there called rationalization of chapters. And it says very clearly that once the national curricular framework is out, the textbook will be written to follow that. Now, having a new textbook every year, modifications, new textbook, and another textbook in the third year, that much change anyway students can't handle. So we happen to be in this uncertain state of being in a holding pattern year. That was the first and the third. The second one in between, the periodic table specifically, is a great example of that. Even if you're in a holding pattern year, some things are basic and fundamental to your understanding of how you structure the world. The periodic table specifically is something that I have probably never used directly. All the ridiculous memorization we had to do, and honestly, I think I did it in class 7 or 8, not even in class 10. I'm that old. But we had to memorize a lot of ridiculous stuff. I'd be perfectly happy if the memorization and the rote learning question answers of the periodic table are scrapped, but the periodic table itself, like many other fundamental principles, has great uses. It teaches you how to organize things in the world. It teaches you how to understand patterns. It teaches you how to build insights. It teaches you basic things like why you shouldn't buy 24-karat gold for everyday use. This is the kind of fundamental insight that every student needs. Why you're not supposed to carry camphor on an aeroplane, why things auto-combust, how things relate to each other. There is so much that is built into some fundamental concepts, including the theory of evolution, that I think students certainly must have that included. And I'm absolutely confident. I do have a great deal of faith and optimism in the NCERT, because when you look at the NCF, the National Curricular Framework, it very clearly says that these things will be included in the class 10 chapters.
No, but okay, no. So that you've explained that well, Meeta Sengupta, and thank you for that. That this is kind of a gap year. But for the kids in grade 10, it doesn't matter if it's a gap year. They will hopefully do their 10th standard only once. Hopefully they'll all pass, and they'll do their 10th standard only once. And also, is there a thought process behind this? I want to bring in Professor J.S. Rajput, former director NCERT, is also with us on the show. Professor Rajput, what would be interesting to know at this point, before we jump into was this right and was this wrong? Is there a process? Is there a clear laid out process when such rationalization takes place? Who decides, and how do you come to a conclusion in the NCERT on what stays and what goes?
NCERT has a very strong and well-established practice of making changes in the textbooks or revising its curriculum and syllabi. Every year, we receive in NCERT a large number of suggestions from teachers, from practitioners, from parents, and these are taken into account when the book is reprinted, right? These are minor corrections. Then, whenever a textbook is prepared, there is a very prolonged process. It goes through several stages. And any change that takes place is made only after consulting people from several states, several institutions, top-level institutions, experts. So my feeling is you have to make changes. If because of COVID some chapters were dropped, after COVID also you have to ensure that things which have become more relevant because of COVID, they are included, and therefore something has to be removed or deleted or taken out. This is all that has happened. My point is, when this type of discussions take place, why don't we trust NCERT? Ask any person in the civil services, and he will say, I'm grateful to NCERT because of its books. And this is our prime contribution to the society, to the education in India, because every school board follows what NCERT does. They may politically oppose. They are opposed. Some of them are opposing even the NEP. But this textbook, where we say that you must include the local element of the curriculum also, you can have that, but labels should remain same everywhere. So I do not see any point in this type of a discussion that normally arises. A lobby, a certain group always comes and criticizes NCERT. No, periodic table. What is the use of periodic table? Let me ask, for those 35 lakh children who appeared in class 10 and 12 examination last year, but who have dropped out, who have gone into life. For them, certain other things are more relevant. Then we also forget that these are the times of lifelong learning. These are not the times of when you depend only on teachers and textbooks. They are not the only resources. There are so many resources available to children.
Right.
I am a professor of physics. I have studied periodic table, but ask me how much use periodic table has been to me. I don't deprecate. It's a very important contribution, fine. But if
Sure.
NCERT decides, because taking an overall view from, say, class 3 to class 12, they have a right to make changes. Let us respect that right, and if anybody has a suggestion, send it to them. And I tell you, I have been familiar, I have done it. And if you had time,
Right.
I would have given one example also, but I don't think you have the time.
I'll come back to you. I'll
give
come
you an
back to you.
example
Okay,
how
Professor.
things change.
Okay, Professor Tanveer Ejaz. So two key points.
Right,
Changes
right,
happen. Respect NCERT. Respect NCERT, and more importantly, the respect. Trust NCERT is what Professor Rajput is saying. कि किया होगा काटा होगा तो कोई कारण होगा. Who needs periodic table? Well, most people watching this will barely remember what they learned in class 10, and then who needed any of that? But we all had to learn it to have a basic education. So that's maybe a discussion at a different level. But on the point of trust NCERT, why question NCERT? What would be your response to that?
Yeah, NCERT, of course, is a textbook, and a textbook which is having a very low price, and it is available across the nation, and it is therefore need to have some standard knowledge, which means some standard established knowledge, right? So whatever has been excised or whatever has been deleted, the reason which are given, the rationalization reason which is given, I don't think that's the real, or perhaps, anyone can easily make out that the reason for excision is not rationalization, but it's highly political and ideological, right? Now, why I'm saying this is because, this is a bizarre kind of an argument which says that, what is not useful, let's do it away. I am not able to understand that how periodic table is not useful, how democracy is not useful, how political
But may
parties are
I
not
ask you,
useful.
may I ask you,
No,
Professor
just-
Tanveer, what is
just a sec,
ideological or political about periodic table and theory of evolution?
Yeah, of course. Theory of evolution, it's very interesting to see that if you do not believe in theory of evolution, you will have to debunk a lot of things, in medicine, in biology, right? And you have to think, everything evolves. Nothing is a status quo in this world. So everything is evolving, right? So we have to understand the evolution aspect, all discipline, all knowledge, all text, context, whatever you take, it evolves. So we have to understand the whole process of this evolution. We can't take, we must understand that we are living in a modern age. We are not in an age near dark ages, right? And there was a period called Renaissance, which has given us some understanding of what established knowledge is. So suppose if you want to replace something, let us have that's established knowledge across the world. It's a global world. We have to compete with people who are there, doing a lot of research and coming up with some established knowledge. So we'll have to counter whether that knowledge is truth or not. So I'm it's a travesty of education. Students, they are treated as guinea pig. Again, new government will come in, they'll remove it. Another government will. So knowledge must guide the government. Government should not guide the knowledge, right? That should be the larger idea. Government must understand
Okay,
that there should be
it shouldn't be
university
random.
system.
At the very least, it shouldn't be random. I don't know if all of these are political decisions or ideological decisions. Some things just seem random. I don't know if there's anything
Yes,
political or ideological about the
knowledge is
periodic
becoming
table.
knowledge is becoming very patchy. You know, there is an
Okay.
evolution process of knowledge, so it's becoming very
Let's
patchy.
get the
right?
view. Let's get the view of a practitioner who deals with children and students of this age. Rupali Kodisha, principal of American Public School, with us. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us this evening. Students must be happy if they have to study less. One presumes.
Yes,
They
I
are
differ.
happy with lesser burden. But is this good for them?
No, this is not good. We are reducing the quantum and we are making things very easy, just like how we did when CCE was implemented. And that is the time we thought that eliminating board examination is going to lessen the burden. And then we reviewed our actions and we had put the board exams in place. So yes, this is not the right move to focus on reducing the quantum of syllabus. Having said that, I just heard one of our respectable speaker mention that whatever you learn in grade 10, sometimes you don't put it to use or you don't remember it. So see, I differ from that point of view that at 10th class, you study variety of subjects. After class 10th, the number of subjects narrow down. And then you go for graduation or post-graduation. The choices further narrow down and not the choices, but the subjects that you study, they narrow down. So it is the class 10th level where you study variety of subjects and you attain a common knowledge. I just quote one example now that we are discussing periodic table. And see, very recently there was a news that we found resources of lithium in Jammu
Yes.
Kashmir. So imagine if the child doesn't even know what is lithium and would wonder that what this piece of news mean to him or her. So I think at class 10th level, basic knowledge should be imparted, and which is why all these topics which are in question currently, which have been eliminated, I think it should be reviewed all over again because periodic table or we talk about theory of evolution, all these things are very important at class 10th level. Now, once these children go to class 11, a class 11th commerce student might not study periodic table ever again and would be oblivious of such fact. So likewise,
true.
a science student may not study about democracy and would be oblivious to certain things. So
Okay.
at class 10th, we should expose the children to variety of concepts. Also,
In
if
fact,
we talk about the
for our viewers, courtesy our producers, we're giving you a refresher course on the periodic table on your screen in case you've forgotten what we're talking about. I want to come to Professor Rajput because he made that comment you're talking about. Who remembers what you do in class 10th? By that extension of that logic, Professor Rajput, then what's the whole point of doing anything in class 10th? Because the idea is that you get a basic amount of understanding broadly on subjects before you decide to specialize in what you are interested in. So do you think there should be some, explanation on why this is chopped and not that?
I'm sure this has not been done by politicians, as one learned professor remarked. NCERT has a reputation, it has a credibility, it has a acceptability, it asserts it's not only a textbook writing institution, it's a research institution. This is, people forget about this E in the NCERT. It does its changes only after there is a research input in that area. If there are survey inputs in that area, and now tell me when somebody says that it is not being done professionally but under political pressure, I can cite numerous examples on this, but I would not like to bring that here. The point is, you distrust the organization on political constraints, and that is the difficulty.
Would you have, may
talk to
I ask you,
NCERT,
Professor
NCERT
Rajput,
doesn't do it
would you
on
have,
on its own,
if you had to make this decision, if I may
Yes.
ask you, would you have chopped out periodic table and evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution from class 10 science textbook?
I would not reply this question now like this. I would have consulted at least 10 professors, including those from Tata Institute, from NPL, from the CSIR, and at least 10 teachers. Only then I would have touched any particular topic, and I hope NCERT must have done some such process with which I am not familiar. We have an established practice. It is not done by politicians. It is not done by under political pressure. I have withstood political pressure, and I know what is being done. I consulted the best of the professors. Their list you see in the NCERT in the initial they give you. So I have trust in people only because I am not there. Some people are worried, very much worried, and I have to say this here. They were controlling all this for 30, 35 years, 40 years, and now that they control somebody else, they have to learn to tolerate others. The quality of tolerance.
Frankly,
has to
sir,
come
you
in
know,
academic field also.
frankly,
One,
I must say this
don't
topic
see
becomes
everything from the
political,
angle.
but it's not about the politics. I said that right at the outset. Whether 1,800 academicians have written, we should, you know, consider that. If political opposition is saying something, we should report it. But at the end of the day, it's about the students. Let's not lose our focus here. It's about the students and what they should learn. Meeta Sengupta, I started with you.
It's okay. Very,
Yeah, Meeta Sengupta, you know, Indian students and the Indian education system has actually stood the test of time. And we keep cribbing about the rote learning and, you know, how it's brainless mugging up of stuff. But top CEOs of multinationals today are of Indian origin and have benefited from this Indian style of education. I want to come to the point number 1 of NCERT, saying we have to reduce the burden. Do students actually need burden reduced in 2023? If they have missed out on stuff because of COVID-19, don't they need to catch up instead of, you know, going slow? I want to understand that basic concept.
At the risk of being very unpopular with everybody, with students, with teachers, and everybody, I will agree with you and say that the Indian education system has stood the test of time. But it has not necessarily stood the test of time because of its rote learning. That is probably one of its bigger failures. It has stood the test of time because we are able to create goal-setting techniques, time management techniques. We are able to create structured systems that our students are able to replicate again and again. We are able to create chaos and diversity. We are able to bring innumerable new things suddenly into our performance of our education system. And we are able to, specifically, for example, for the periodic table, which I completely agree is necessary to learning in class 10, it is because it gives you a sense of how to organize the world, how to organize the chaos around you, how to put things in a certain process, in a certain methodology, how to create methodologies for your own future. You become the boss of a chemical factory, or you become the boss of a software factory, or whatever you become the boss of. You have to be organized. You have to create processes. Our system has been very rigorous in creating those processes. Also, coming slightly, I never go political. I'm not going to talk to the political point of it, but specifically for the periodic table and for the evolution theory, in this case, I'm not convinced that this could be ideological, because the Dashavatar is supposed to be a metaphor for evolution, so it fits in with the ideology. The Damascus steel came out of India. That is a deep history of alloy making, and therefore it depends very much on understanding our the periodic table, etc. These two specific examples that we are picking today actually have deep reasons. And in fact, if we can, even if we believe that this is ideological, we can keep on reminding people that we have a deep history of science in the country. So let's just go along with our deep history of science. We are not anti-science. We are the mother of democracy.
Okay.
Democracy will be a part of it. So
discussion aside, I mean, do we want to teach our kids less or more? at a basic level, of course, we are in an era of specialization. Let's be honest, we're in an era where the whole concept of what education, counts and what doesn't is being questioned. Professor Rajput talked about, whether what you learn in class 10 is useful. Today, people will argue, do you really need to know your sums because you can get a calculator to do it? Do you know how to read a clock because you have a smart watch or your phone tells you the time? Will you need to know how to spell because there's software that can do it for you? You'll probably not even be writing in the next 20 years. So we're in the middle of that change. We have to decide now whether we want to stick to the basics or not. So it is, frankly, a bigger conversation than ideology, than politics. It needs that level of thought. I have to wrap it here. I'm out of time.
No, this is not the words of...
Yes. I'm out of time. I have to wrap it up.
Incorrect.